What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 99. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode where we're going to journey into a new movie that we got to check out in theaters or in streaming. We break it down, we dissect our favorite things, we talk about pros and cons, and then we even recommend whether you should check it out in theaters, skip it, or wait for streaming. And then at the end of the podcast, we also decide, is this movie timeless? Can it be a movie that you can add to your rotation? You can add to your movie collection to rewatch over and over again. Before we talk about this week's movie, though, I did want to call out that episode 98 is up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. This past weekend was Glicked weekend. If you don't know what Glicked is, it is actually the combination of Gladiator 2 and Wicked. Both movies opened on the exact same day, very similar to last year when we had Barbenheimer. Well, this is 2024's version of that. It's called Glicked, at least that's what I'm calling it. So if you guys haven't checked it out, episode 98 is up, and that's actually where I talk about Gladiator 2. I dissect everything about the film, what I enjoyed, what I didn't enjoy so much, and really kind of decide whether it is a film I would want to rewatch in the future. So go ahead and check it out on those platforms, and let me know in the comments or in the reviews of those platforms if you enjoyed Gladiator 2 and if you would consider it a timeless movie. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into episode 99, in which we are talking about Wicked, directed by John Chu. Now, one thing that I've been really appreciative about this podcast is it's opened my options for what kind of movies I typically watch. I've said it multiple times. I know I'm a broken record, but action, superhero, that's typically the genre that I'm always gravitating towards. However, like I mentioned, because of this podcast, I've watched a lot more types of genres of films, like horror, like drama, and now we're going to get into the musical piece of it as well. I, in the past, have not really been a big fan of musicals just because for some reason my brain can't suspend the disbelief that people are having a conversation, then they jump into song and dance. But slowly, I've gotten more and more into different types of musicals. One of my favorite ones is La La Land. I know that's one of many people's favorites, but that one again, it had the right balance of story and musical. And so that's kind of like my little background in regards to this genre of film. And so, knowing that Wicked was coming out, I knew that it was being adapted from a Broadway play. And I had heard such great things about the musical that was running in Broadway. And so now my curiosity was, well, what are they going to expand in the live action piece of it, right? If it's already a Broadway play, what else can they do? Or where can they fill in more gaps to explain a better story? And so I watched the trailer and I got exactly what I needed. They were basically trying to kind of give you the perspective of Elphaba, who is the Wicked Witch of the West. Before she actually becomes that witch, you're kind of seeing her story play out where she has an actual friendship with Galinda. You see her interact with other types of characters. And so really caught me by surprise at how much I enjoyed the trailer. But again, still a little bit hesitant just because, again, it's not my style of movie, but I still wanted to give it a shot. And because of the fact that the musical is still going on and still one of the most loved Broadway musicals, I was like very hopeful that this would really catch me in that position of like, yeah, that this can really make me a bigger fan of musicals. So again, the trailer did what it had to do. Now that we got to check it out on opening night, let's go ahead and dive into some non-spoiler thoughts about Wicked. Okay, Wicked for me was a great theater experience. I was blown away at how much I enjoyed this movie. I wasn't trying to be skeptical or anything of that nature, but again, just because of the type of movie it is, it's not really my cup of tea. And I was just really impressed at how it was able to hook me right from the beginning. And everything just kind of kept getting better and better, whether it was funny moments between the two main characters, which are Elphaba and Galinda. Elphaba is played by Cynthia Erivo, and Galinda is played by Ariana Grande. Their interactions with each other, with other characters in the university that they're in, it surprised me at how funny the movie was. And then also, there's just excellent musical pieces. Now, from a musical perspective, musical genre, again, that's not my forte, but it's just still impressed me at how great it was. The songs were just so energetic. They just fill the audience with like, that type of energy that where you want to sing along, right? Nobody was singing along in our theaters, but I'm just saying that that's kind of the energy that you got out of it. And then great performances, and just the way that they were able to build this world of Oz. The visuals of this film is just incredible. We'll dive into that a little bit in the pros, but again, overall, a great movie. I was really surprised. The film, it has a runtime of 2 hours and 40 minutes. It does not feel that runtime at all. It just keeps moving at a great pace. And again, that has to do with the musical pieces. You're jumping from one, then you get a little bit of story, then you get another musical piece, but everything just kind of builds upon itself and it just makes that experience. It just makes you have a fun time along the ride that you're taking on Wicked. So all great stuff that I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it after I left the theater. Just as a general synopsis about Wicked, in case you aren't aware, this is, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a adaptation of the Broadway musical, and it's actually a part one. So there is going to be multiple parts of this Wicked franchise. As soon as the movie starts, says Wicked Part 1. And so just to kind of give you that heads up before you check this out if you haven't seen the movie. But the film revolves around Elphaba, who, like I mentioned, is going to become the Wicked Witch of the West. And it's basically a story revolving around how she basically goes from a young kid finding out her powers and really goes through life and eventually has the chance to meet the Wizard of Oz. Now, before that happens, like I stated, the story kind of picks up with Elphaba, how she's basically born. They show her with her green skin, and she ends up finding out that she has powers. But because of her green skin and because of her powers, she's like a outlier. She is different from everybody else, which means that people judge her, people look at her a funny way, people, she doesn't have many friends. So she's always a loner and she's always just not included in any other kind of groups or any types of situations where people might be around. So she's always kind of had to face that uphill battle ever since she was younger. And so she continues to face that up until the point where she's taking her sister, called Nessa, to Shiz University. So she's taking her sister, and in that moment of getting to Shiz University, something occurs where Elphaba has to use her powers. That catches the attention of Madame Morrible, who is the Dean of Sorcery. And actually, because of that action of her abilities, Elphaba ends up getting enrolled in Shiz University. And from there, she meets Galinda. She starts meeting other characters. She starts really kind of getting the attention of all the students there, all up until the point where she ends up getting a ticket to go visit the Wizard of Oz because of her special magical abilities. And then she ends up unraveling different types of truths that she wasn't expecting. So that's kind of the overall synopsis of the film. I gotta say, though, that after the movie was over, it's just, again, I had a lot of fun. Great energy throughout. I was never bored at anything that was going on. The musical pieces never tired me in any way. I was always looking forward to, okay, what's the next song, or what's the next character that's going to get their own little solo to sing or to dance. So everything from a musical side of it was just excellent. And I gotta say, this is probably hyperbole and recency bias as well. But to me, because this is a part one, this probably ends better than any other kind of part one film that I've seen recently. Now, there's not a lot of part one films that might come out, in recent time. The first ones that kind of come into my mind are Dune Part One, Across the Spider Verse. You have these movies where in Dune Part One, it ends in a very weird place where it kind of like you don't feel like you got a complete story. It felt like it was just all world building, and then there's a climax, but it's not a true climax because you know that there's a bigger threat going on in Dune. It eventually gets resolved in Dune Part 2, but just the way that Dune Part 1 ended, it left me unsatisfied. Very similar to Across the Spider-Verse. Now, Across the Spider-Verse is the second movie of the trilogy that they're setting up for the Into the Spider-Verse series, but the way that Across the Spider-Verse also ended was very weird. They showed too much about what was coming. I'd rather have left off more, dark. I always throw out examples. Empire Strikes Back, Avengers Infinity War. Those are great films that are a complete story, a complete arc, and they end in a way where, whoa, like I cannot wait to see what happens next. And both Dune Part 1, Across the Spider-Verse, again, those are just films that I remember. Neither one of those really ended with me wanting to like, oh, I cannot wait to see what's left. I left the theater thinking, oh, That's unfortunate. Like it feels like I didn't really get a complete movie. That is not the case with Wicked. To me, Wicked lands the ending so well, and it ends with such a strong and powerful musical piece that I just left with goosebumps after the ending. And it just ends on a great note. It's not even like, it's still a cliffhanger, but it leaves you with the feeling of, hey, I am fulfilled and I cannot wait for Wicked Part 2. So that was my experience watching Wicked over the weekend. It was just a lot of fun. I am excited for what is next. I do not want to get spoiled by any other kind of article or anything about the next part of Wicked. But I got to say that for my recommendation, I highly recommend you guys go check out Wicked. Pretty sure, again, if you're already a fan of the Broadway musical, you're going to love this one. If you're not a fan of musicals like I am, I still push you guys to go check it out in theaters because not only is it the musical that kind of keeps you engaged, but the visuals are just beautiful and breathtaking as well. So, my recommendation, if you have a local theater near you that is playing Wicked, go check it out. And I know it's long, 2 hours and 40 minutes, but I trust me, it does not feel that way. It goes by really fast by, again, how engaging the story is. Okay, that's enough for me kind of with my non-spoiler section. Let's start spoiling some stuff. Let's start diving into some pros and some cons about this film Wicked. First pro for me, super easy, and it's got to be the cinematography. The way that this film lays out the world of Oz is just so awesome. Now I get it. This might be a con for some folks, right? Because there is a lot of CGI used. There's a lot of visual effects that are being played out within the film. But to me, it meshes really well with what the characters are doing, especially in their musical pieces. The way that those kind of environments are set up, it's so well done and it captures the essence of like what these characters are facing, whether they're in Shiz University, there's musical pieces that are playing in Emerald City. Everything that the cinematography like in the film does, it just captures every setting really well. The colors within the film just pop so much. And again, that could have been because we went to check it out in Dolby Cinema. But all the greens, all the pinks, all the blues, all these colors that were just highlighted on the screen just make it for so much more of an enjoyable experience because like you mentioned, if you're staring at one thing or you're looking at a character here, there could be something else that just kind of immediately drags your attention to this specific location. Like I was mentioning a little bit before, in the way that the film captures these different types of either towns or cities, like again, Shiz University, you can see the scale of how big the university is. When you get to the Emerald City, they just show you all of the amazing kind of castles and buildings that are in this community, the way that people live around this city, everything from that, even from the point of Elphaba, when she takes flight for the first time with her broomstick, they just capture that all so well and it just looks realistic. Even though, again, I know that it's filled with CGI, but to me, it didn't take me out of the experience. To me, it didn't make me feel like, oh, the actors are not really looking at anything in the screen. No, everything from a visual perspective, the coloring, the way that they were just able to make these characters feel like they were actually in this place called Oz. So great job on the cinematography side for Wicked. Second pro for me is the set design of the entire film. I kind of mentioned it a little bit on the cinematography piece of it, but the set design for these different cities or towns was just incredible. The way that they were able to build these different sets to make them look different, right? You have Shiz University, which again just kind of tries to almost get that feeling of a very elegant type of university, almost like a Hogwarts, but with more light, obviously. But you have these places where they have like in the university you have a library, you have the classroom, you have all these different types of locations, but everything feels tangible. Everything feels like the characters are actually living in these environments. They're going to these universities and they're staying here day in and day out. And when a film can do that in regards to its set design, it just adds much more to the performance because now you're not looking behind the actors. You're not looking at the background. You're focusing on, okay, well, here's what this character is doing or here's what they're doing. One other thing that I call out is the set design for the musical set pieces was also incredible. There's an awesome musical piece where it takes place in a library and you have the characters dancing around, going through the library, sliding on books. But again, everything in those types of musical pieces, not just that one, but all of them really, they all feel like they take place. They had to actually build these set pieces, build these rooms, these offices, these castles really, and everything just feels like you can actually go to this place and it's something that you can actually visit. And so whenever a film is able to really design some cool sets, it just adds so much more to the experience because it really just kind of puts you in the right mindset as to, yes, I am in this world. Third pro for me is I also really enjoyed the setup of a couple of storylines that were playing out in Wicked. So, one of the things that I was thinking about when I watched the trailer for Wicked was, okay, this seems to be basically the setup of how Elphaba becomes the Wicked Witch of the West. But what else is there going to be, right? Is there any other kind of subplots that are going to take place? Is there something that kind of pushes her from being good to evil? What's going to happen? And it really does a good job of things that again they didn't highlight in the trailer, but that's to my benefit and to the audience benefit because there were storylines about how first they show Elphaba who has magical abilities. She's able to do a lot of things that nobody else can, but the film ends up setting it up where Madame Morrible, played by Michelle Yeoh, she it seems like she has good intent. She has this kind of like very kind feeling of, hey, look, let me teach you. Let me help you harness the ability that you don't know how to control yet. And then by the end of the movie, you end up realizing that Madame Morrible actually was working with the wizard, and you notice that they actually just wanted to harness Elphaba's power in order to start really trying to control animals, control all these different types of things, and to be able to really spy on the people of Oz. So again, it's great setup because again they make Michelle Yeoh's character of Madame Morrible very unassuming, very again kind. She just wants to help Elphaba harness and become a even better sorcerer, but it's all for the wrong reasons. So really good stuff on that side. And then also there was a storyline about animals. There was a couple of like animals. There was like a goat that was an actual professor at the Shiz University. His name was Dr. Dillamond, who was played by Peter Dinklage. And again, they had set up this whole storyline where animals are slowly getting their ability to talk removed, and nobody knows why. Like, why is it happening? There used to be a lot more animal professors. Now there's only one or two, and so there's a whole subplot of Elphaba finding out that animals are basically getting their ability to talk removed. And she doesn't understand why, but she wants to help. And so that becomes another interesting storyline. And when you find out again who's doing that, it kind of all starts making sense. It all starts connecting the dots in those cases. But again, really enjoyed those kind of subplot lines and how they were able to kind of add even more to the story that you were already watching about Elphaba and Galinda as well. Fourth pro that I have, I'm going to keep going. There's a lot of pros that I had here, but fourth pro is, and this was obvious. This one's a really easy one for me to get through, but the music, it was excellent. It was just everything that I was kind of hoping that it could be from a musical. It just hit it and it knocked it out of the park. There's so many catchy songs. There's Defying Gravity, which was amazing at the end of the film. There was Popular. And again, I know these are all just adapted from the Broadway musical, but I had never heard any of them. I maybe have heard like little snippets here and there, but never the entire thing. And so to me, it left me enjoying the energy that every song would play on screen, that even after the movie ended, I went back to Spotify and listened to some of those songs. I listened to Defying Gravity again. I listened to Popular. Like I mentioned, I don't think there's a. I'm really trying to think, and it's probably because I'm on the spot, but I don't think there's another movie that kind of ended at such a strong way as this movie did. It ends with the last song being Defying Gravity, and you see Cynthia Erivo playing Elphaba just be able to take flight. And the way that they shot that, the way that they were able to kind of capture her just moving through the sky, it was so freaking awesome. But also her singing it at the same time. Just, man, it again, music was just outstanding for me. Last pro is the interactions between Elphaba and Galinda. I mean, Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, they just had great on-screen chemistry. So anytime they were together, either they were, really kind of battling at first like that, they kind of loathed each other. That's actually one of the songs that they sang together. But even when they were just, either battling against each other or being friends or caring for each other, everything worked between the two of them. Everything was so smooth. But even when you interacted with other side characters, every little interaction, whether it be in a musical, different types of looks that they were giving each other, everyone just seemed to understand their role, and it just worked to perfection. So, really enjoyed all the interactions between the characters, but more specifically, Elphaba and Galinda. You believed in their friendship. You believed that they really cared for each other in one way or another. But again, really outstanding stuff. So shout out to the entire cast that was a part of the Wicked film. Again, great stuff that everybody was able to perform. All right, let's move into cons. I'm gonna be honest. I don't have a lot of cons for Wicked. I mean, I was thinking that maybe like a con was gonna be like that, the runtime. But again, to me, runtime is not a problem. I have no issue with it. It feels like it moves really fast. I mean, other than like again, there's nothing really mind blowing when it comes to the story, right? I mean, we've seen these kind of stories before. A outsider that comes into a new environment and they are either bullied or they're judged in some way, and eventually they gain the favor of people that are there. So again, that's not really anything that I didn't mind it. I still enjoyed the story throughout, but really that's all I got. There's nothing really that can make me give it like a nitpick or a con. Now, I do want to make it clear, it's not a perfect movie, right? Like, I mean, it gets there, but it's not something that I would say like this is perfection, 10 out of 10. There's probably other things after multiple rewatches. Again, I've only watched it once, but just calling it out there again that even though I don't have a nitpick or a con, there could still be something that I could find in a flaw, but I just didn't see that in the first viewing. Well, since there's no cons, let's bring it back to the positives. Let's call out our favorite moments, favorite performances, and favorite shot of the movie. Favorite performance. This is actually where it's going to get tough. Okay, favorite performance. There's only two individuals for me that I can think of. It's Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, and it's Ariana Grande as Galinda. Both of them, no matter who you choose, both had amazing performances. Let's start off with Galinda. I mean, Ariana Grande, she's already a talented star. She came out in different types of shows on Nickelodeon, so she's already kind of had that kind of ability to kind of have that comedic style. And she has a lot of funny moments in this movie. She had me laughing by like, little smirks or looks that she has, noises that she would make if she'd fall somewhere, just things of that nature. She just has that kind of comedic timing so down. And again, her character overall was just so funny. But again, her singing ability is incredible. I mean, we know that, right? She is a certified pop star. So her performance again in this film, I enjoyed it very thoroughly. But I also got to call out Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba. I mean, she had such a strong performance as this character, and she's the main protagonist. I mean, it's kind of shared between Galinda and Elphaba, but really it's her story. And like I mentioned, she has to deal with people judging her. She has to deal with being different. And all throughout that performance, she never loses her emotion. Like, I mean, there are moments where she has outbursts, but the outbursts come from her abilities, like the way that she's able to kind of move things and do these different types of spells. That's where like the outbursts come from, but not from her herself. She was always in control. She was always respectful and always caring. And that's actually something I forgot to mention when I watched the trailers. I got a little worried because when I watched the trailers, I got the impression that like she seemed like she had everything figured out. She knew what she wanted. She knew what she had to do in regards to not being afraid of the wizard. And so that kind of got me a little worried in regards to like, okay, does this protagonist already have everything kind of figured out? What challenges will she face? But no, the film immediately puts her in a position of she is an outsider. She's going to get challenged every step of the way. But look at how she's able to still go through that and not have it bother her in any way and still come out on top. So unbelievable performances by both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. I'm gonna cop out. I'm not gonna be able to choose one or the other. I'm gonna choose both because both are just they're essential to this movie like that. Well, I can't imagine like just kind of choosing one or the other again because both are really essential to this story and they both add their own complexity to their characters. And that's another thing that I forgot to mention in my pros. They're both so different. You have Elphaba, who is a very serious kind of a character. She knows and how to have fun in certain situations. She knows, like how to kind of really interact with other people. But then you have the opposite side of it, where Galinda, Ariana Grande's character, she's very presumptuous. She's very like I want to help people that are below me, but because I'm so great, you know? And she's like, she already considers herself above everybody else. And so it's just a complete opposite as to what Elphaba represents in the film. But again, both of them together just is really what makes this film spectacular. So again, I'm going to cop out. I'm not going to choose either one. I think both performances are incredible. All right, let's move on to favorite moment. I kind of teased this a little bit in one of my pros, but favorite moment for me is Defying Gravity scene. I got goosebumps after I heard kind of Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba begin to sing that song, but not only hear her sing, but also see her just flying around. This is the first time she takes flight on the broomstick, and she just has like such a powerful voice that man, it just it captivated me the entire time, and that was really the last scene of the movie. And so that would probably be my one of my top scenes of this film. Again, because it gave me goosebumps. It just had me just completely at awe of what Cynthia Erivo was able to do with Elphaba, and then also after the movie had me listening to that song over and over again. So that's probably my favorite scene. Another great scene as well is the scene where all the characters are in a specific ballroom. They're actually at a dance and everybody's having a good time. And the scene between Elphaba and Galinda, when they actually finally become friends, very emotional. Because, you know, before this, you just see them between Elphaba and Galinda, you just kind of see them butting heads. But this is really the first true time where you see their friendship become real. And what's so cool about the scene is they don't even speak any words. They're literally just dancing. You see Galinda go out into the dance floor. Nobody's dancing with Elphaba. She's by herself, and Galinda goes up to her, starts copying the moves, learning what she's trying to do, and without speaking one word, without even a lot of music, you're just seeing their reactions. It was just really well done scene, and I'm just great stuff that they were able to pull off to add to two characters without even having any dialogue. That's when you know that you've nailed it with that scene is being able to add emotion and intensity and show and really represent that like, hey, these two individuals that seem like rivals, they're now friends without even saying a word, which is incredible. And then favorite shot for me is going to be Elphaba flying, floating above everyone at the end of the movie as she's singing Defying Gravity. Her cloak, cape just starts flowing like crazy. I don't know how it got that big, but it just looks so cool. You have like this sky it almost looks like it's like a sunset. It's cloudy, and you just see her flying over the tower of the Wizard of Oz, and it just looked so freaking majestic. And again, gave me goosebumps. It gave me that feeling of like, holy crap, like this is not what I expected this movie to do to me as I was watching it, but man, it just landed for me. So those are some of the favorite things, guys, that I really enjoyed about Wicked. Now let's go ahead and move on to the final segment of the Timeless Movie Podcast. And that is where we decide, is Wicked timeless? Can I see myself rewatching this movie over and over again, or adding it to my collection or a rotation? I know I said that the favorite performance was probably going to be my toughest decision. I think this actually might be the toughest one that I have. I really enjoyed Wicked, and I think the fact that it's a genre that I'm not really that into, and it was still able to really blow me away. I forgot another thing that I was supposed to say at the beginning. The trailer, I felt like, gave me too much of the movie. It gave me like really what was going to take place from beginning, middle, and end. So I kind of had a feeling as to what was going to take place. But you know what's incredible is I still enjoyed it, even though I knew what was coming or knew what scenes might be popping up. So to me, I think my decision as of today is that Wicked is a timeless movie, and I would be happy to watch this again because of the things I've already mentioned, right? You have characters that are interesting. You have actual characters that you want to root for. And it's unfortunate because, the movie I just talked about, Gladiator 2, spoiler warning for anybody that hasn't seen that review or heard my review, but that was one of my cons is I couldn't really root or get behind Paul Mescal's character of Lucius. Like I couldn't, and he's the main protagonist. That is not the case here. I could get behind Elphaba. I could get behind Galinda. And you can really have this feeling of, man, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in part two. That's exact feeling that I had. I just am really curious where these characters ended in part one. what is Elphaba gonna do? Is she gonna go to a darker route? Well, what about Galinda? Why didn't she decide to go with Elphaba, right? What is her decision making in this process, and how do they come together in the second part? It gives me this feeling of I really care for these characters, and I want to know what happens next. And that just again, it's just a home run for me. The music piece of it, again, there's songs that I definitely would want to watch it again just to hear and see that musical piece done one more time. Other thing that I really enjoyed was the visuals. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of things that you could definitely miss because there's so much going on the screen, so much in the musical pieces that you could definitely miss, whether they're in the Emerald City or Shiz University, wherever it might be. But visually, it is a stunning movie. So again, those are just kind of some of the thoughts that I'm having. Again, it could be recency biased. I enjoyed it so much, and the ending just landed so well for me that that's probably one of the reasons why I'm considering it a timeless movie. But all I can say is, again, as of today, this is a movie that I definitely would want to rewatch. Probably will rewatch soon, and I cannot wait for Wicked Part 2 as well. But as I always say, guys, those are my personal opinions. What did you guys think about Wicked? Have you had a chance to check out Wicked in theaters? If you have, let me know down below. What was your favorite moment? How about your favorite song? Who was your favorite character? And is this film timeless? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. This has been part 2 of the Glicked weekend that we've been reviewing. My name is Victor Vasquez. This has been episode number 99 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we hit episode 100. I cannot believe that I have been talking about 100 movies already. This is nuts. But just want to say thank you so much to anybody that's listened, even for a second, even for a minute, however long. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And I'm really looking forward to the next 100 movies that we'll be covering on this podcast. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys later.